This is Paige from Mosaic Moments, and today I am doing a demo with this 2x4 die from the Clover set. And today is going to be lots of fun because I'm going to teach you how to create a panorama such as this one. So really exciting one. And I should also note this is an advanced tutorial. Let's go ahead and get started. So your first step for creating this panorama is getting this frame piece. I call it the frame piece anyway. So you need that cut from the 2x4 Clover die. So of course you're going to put it in your machine, and you need to look at the manufacturer's instructions for your die machine because each one is different. I'm using the Sizzix BigKick. Alright, so when you cut it through the machine, you want to get this frame piece that is within the die itself, and it may be stuck, so you just need a pair of tweezers to poke it through one of the corners, and then you can carefully take this die cut out of the metal die. Alright, so you're going to be cutting that 5 times in order to create your panorama look. Next, you're going to cut out those pieces. So that's this top portion here, and I just cut enough pattern paper to cut this size of a space. I didn't want to waste my paper, so that's not necessary to make one that would be the same length of the entire die. Alright, then you're going to roll it through, and unlike last time, we got that piece that was within the die. This one, you just punch out easily like that, and you have your piece, and again, you'll need to cut that 5 times. Once you have all your die pieces cut, you can begin gluing the back of them. Again, this is the 2x4 Clover die cut, and I'm using Re-positionable glue from Herma, Dotto, and we love this brand. It works really well. And you can see here, it is a very thin die, so I carefully put the glue on. You just put on a little bit here and there along the edges, and then you're going to carefully line your die along the grid lines here, and you need to just take your time, be sure that the die looks neat and straight, and it is a very thin die, as I said before, so you want to make sure it does not bend or get a crease within the die cut. Alright, and the nice thing is it is repositionable glue on the back of it, so if needed, you can always pick it up and try to reposition your die if needed. Alright, so I have this one down, and I did glue the back of these before I started the video to save on time. Alright, now we're going to add these little top pieces, and they're really easy to add. You just put the glue on the back and then stick it right in that space. You could even, if this is faster for you, it is fast for me, it's just place the glue right on the grid paper. Alright, so as you can see, it's really quick to just fill these spaces in. Alrighty, have this last one here. Alright, so now you kind of have your foundation, and then we're going to need to add the photos. So this is where the advanced portion comes in. If you're not very familiar with our Mosaic Moments cutting mat, you can definitely click that link in the top right corner now to go check out a video that explains the cutting mat more. But to do this technique, you will need a cutting mat. You also need a craft knife and a ruler. We recommend one that's metal with a cork back. And you'll also need that repositionable glue again. That's very important. Alright, so once you get those tools gathered together, you see I have my 2 photos here, and it is a panoramic look, but you can see right in that middle between the 2 photos, the horizon lines don't line up. And so that is what we need to do here, is make sure those line up. So when you do use the die, something's not off, right? And just a note, you could do this with vertical photos, but I actually recommend, since we're using this die to make the panorama, to use horizontal photos. You can get more out of the photo easier than vertical photos. So that's my recommendation. It might be a little more difficult if you're using vertical photographs. Okay? Also, if you want to learn more about panoramas, I also have another link coming up right here that'll teach you about panoramas. If you haven't done one yet, I highly recommend doing a basic panorama first before doing this with the Clover die, so you get an idea of how panoramics work. All right, next I'm going to glue down the back of the photo every inch, and you can use your cutting mat as a guide to see that your glue is getting down on every inch here. And you're going to line it up on the cutting mat. Again, go watch that cutting mat video if you're not familiar with this. So I'm kind of creating this video assuming you have you are somewhat familiar with the cutting system. All right, I'm going to do the same thing on the second photo here, except this one may not line up on the lines exactly. I really am going to make sure this one, the horizon line in that background of the photograph lines up with the same, pretty much I'm going to make sure both photographs line up here and the horizon line is the same. All right, next you're going to take your ruler and you're going to cut these to be the same height. So my goal here is to cut the photographs at the same height. So all you need to do is trim off the extra portion from each photograph. So right here I'm just cutting off that top portion of the top photograph so it'll be the same measurement as the one below. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. The bottom photograph here goes a little bit past the other ones, so I'm going to trim that bottom portion off with my knife. All right. So now I'm going to rotate my cutting mat, so now you can see that between the two photographs, the horizon die now lines up and they're both cut at the same height. All right, this next step is also a bit more advanced than our other die tutorials, so be prepared to take some extra time to make sure your panorama is accurate and lined up well in the end. All right, so first, you're going to peel one of the photographs up, and you're going to start on the side, so prepare to cut on the side that is right next to the other photograph. So I am cutting on the left side of this photograph because it's the closest to, because it's on the side the other photograph starts. All right, next I am only covering up enough of the die so it gets those three center portions. So you can see there's a gap between my photograph and the edge of the die itself. I don't need my, well, really I'm trying to save on the amount I use in my photograph because I'm trying to get 3 different cuts. If you had the photograph going to the edge of the die, you would only be able to fit 2 cuts in. So that's why I'm leaving a little bit of a gap because I really don't need that portion that goes to the edge of the die. I really just need those center portions in the middle of the die. So I did make sure that it lines up along those portions. And I also made sure my photograph is going to be cut, it lines up with the bottom of my Clover die. You have to decide if you want to line it up with the bottom part of your photograph or the top part of your photograph. And then you need to be consistent every time when you do the rest of the cuts. All right, so I cut it through my machine here, and I'm going to leave these 3 cuts stuck together. They did cut through all the way, but they will need to be pulled apart, and I find it easier to glue down and keep everything organized if I just keep it stuck together. Okay, so that was the first cut, and again, we're going to cut the second portion of this photograph. I'm just lining it up to see how it looks for now, but you will need to, I'm going to flip it over in a minute. I'm trying to make, I'm just seeing how it's going to kind of look. Anyway, so again, I'm lining that photograph up. Just take your time here. I made sure, again, that I have that left side lined up right along those 3 middle pieces. And again, I have the bottom of my photograph lined up with the bottom of the cuts. So again, the key is to be consistent every time and make sure that you're pretty much going to need them on the very edge every time. All right, and make sure your washi tape is stuck down really well. My washi tape kept coming up and I had to readjust. So Every washi tape is different. Some of them are very, very sticky. You may not have a problem with it, but make sure that it's stuck down really well before you roll it through the machine. So again, for every cut, you just need to be consistent and make sure it's going along the edges the same every time. All right, now I'm going to roll it through my machine again. It's important to have that washi tape to make sure your photos don't slide around. And again, I'm going to take out these pieces, and you can use a pair of tweezers if you need to. It was easy for me to use my finger. All right, and that portion popped out, but make sure you just keep it all organized so when you put your panorama down, all your pieces, line up and make sense. Okay, so now that portion is finished. Of course, you clean off any washi tape that got left behind, and now we're going to cut our last portion, which this is a very thin portion. As you can see, it doesn't even fit the measurement of the entire die, but it does fit within that space that needs to be cut. So again, you can squeeze in 3 cuts with a 4x6 photograph, but you just got to make sure that you cut it carefully so it'll all fit in there, fit in your panorama in the end. Now I'm using 2 photographs. If it's easier for you, you can line up 3 photographs as well. All right, I'm going to put washi tape on here. So again, just take your time as you're doing this, double check. And by the way, your panorama might be off by a teeny bit. As long as you stick it to either, as long as you're consistent, it should look good once you get the panorama done. But I'm just letting you know, because there's space between each die, if it's a little bit off, I don't think anybody would really even notice. I haven't noticed it being too off or anything. So that's kind of the magic of using the Mosaic Moments system, is if something's a little bit off, no one will notice, because there's those gaps in between each of your cut pieces. All right, this one is pretty much the same steps. I did make the video a little bit faster here just because I think you get the idea. All right, so you just, again, want to carefully, I have the photograph right on the edge again, and I'm making sure that it lines up on the bottom part of the die lines up on the bottom part of my photograph again to stay consistent with what I just cut with the other photograph. So remember, the key is consistency when doing a panorama. Okay, and I have this portion cut, and I'm gonna take this washi tape off the cut part, and then I'm going to use my tweezers here to pull that all out, and there we go. And I only need one more cut, so altogether you're going to be cutting with the Clover die 5 times. And remember, we had to cut the frame part of the die 5 times. All right, I'm going to use my washi tape here again, and some washi tape will probably stick down really, really well, and you won't have to worry about it, but mine picked up, came off really easily. So make sure it's stuck down really well. And I did have an excess portion, but I don't need that for my page. Although if I was to continue and make it a 2 layout page, you may want to keep that portion. All right, I have my last piece here, and I'm now ready to add it all to my grid paper. All right, now the hard part is done. I have all my panoramic pieces lined up here, and the easy part is gluing it down in the Clover die frame pieces below. So the nice thing is, since we had to put glue on the back of these photographs to place them on the cutting mat earlier, you already have glue to place it on your grid paper. So that's what's nice about the repositionable glue, is that you can glue things down on the cutting mat, and then you can pick it up and place it on your grid paper. And again, over time, it'll become permanent. So you don't need to add extra glue. Now, you may need some extra glue if it just needs some extra. But anyway, so I just placed these 3 pieces inside that Clover die frame. So that looks really nice. I think this is what I like about making a panorama with the Clover die, is because it looks so pretty. I mean, when you see the end result, you're gonna love it. So again, there's already glue. I'm just taking off. There's some excess pieces from when I cut it that I'm just taking off, and I do recommend taking the washi tape off from the back. I don't know if it's absolutely necessary, but that's what I do anyway. Alright, so as you can see, this is the really easy part. All you gotta make sure is that all your pieces are lined up correctly so your panorama makes sense and looks good. And really all that's left is to stick each of these little pieces within the Clover die frame. So this part is pretty much the easiest out of making the entire page. So once you get here, you're gonna be happy that it's almost done. Alright, I have this last piece here and I'm finished! And it's so pretty. I love making panoramas. It is one of my favorite things to do with the Mosaic Moments scrapbook system. If you have not made one, I highly recommend it. And the Clover die just adds this extra gorgeous detail to a panorama. Alright, we have reached the end of today's tutorial. This is an advanced one, but it's really fun and you will be satisfied with the end result. I just love this look. Anyway, if you enjoyed this tutorial, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel so you can be updated on future tutorials. We put one out every week. Alright, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial and I'll see you next time.